Cops chase a red van driven by Vitya, an old guy. He tells Irina, his partner, to hide the coffin in the back to avoid trouble. Irina scolds him for not planning ahead. Weeks ago, Vitya spotted old men carrying colorful coffins to a greenhouse at a nursing home. Meanwhile, Nurse Anatolia took an elderly woman's medicine as her prize in a bet. Vitya visited the nursing home and asked Zanka, the manager, to meet his army buddy. Zanka was surprised by the visit, as she hadn't seen visitors in months. Zanka caught Koropalov setting fire to the curtains and rushed to put out the flames. They finally reached Vasilich's room, only to find out he hung himself. After getting Vasilich to rest in the clinic, Vitya told Zanka they stayed in touch through letters after the war. But their reconnection was hindered by life's obstacles. Vitya felt relieved that he got there in time to save his friend. Zanka understood the men's situation, sensing Vasilich's guilt over his wartime actions. However, Anatolia brushed it off as mere impatience. Ignoring Anatolia's dismissal, Zanka confided in Vitya about their shortage of medicine due to more residents and less money. Vitya then asked Zanka to write down the medicine Vasilich needed so he could purchase it. Before she could do so, the home's patron, Nikolai, along with his assistant, Vika, showed up for a promotional video shoot for their foundation. As they settled in for the video, Anatolia griped to Vitya about how their patron provided insufficient funds and shoddy coffins because the place was just a facade. Nikolai began his speech, emphasizing his commitment to elderly care. His bodyguard, Vadik, saw no point in it, but Vika insisted that charity was trending in their time, and it was her job to uphold their boss's reputation. Meanwhile, Vitya snuck over to the patron's car and peered inside. After the filming, Zanka reminded Nikolai about the list of things they needed, which she had sent to his office. Instead of fulfilling their needs, he gave them a beat-up red van adorned with his foundation's advertising. Zanka persisted, emphasizing the necessity of other basics, like a heater for the cold weather, and pointed out that none of them knew how to operate the van. Frustrated, Nikolai handed her some money before departing. Zanka felt guilty for not securing what they required, blaming herself for her conversation with him. Vika reassured her, affirming that she did the right thing. However, Nikolai's lack of concern for their well-being indicated that his foundation was primarily for his own reputation. Despite this, Zanka defended their benefactor, citing the assistance he had provided. Not wishing to prolong the argument, Vika gave her money for Vasilich's medicine. He even offered to drive the van in exchange for lodging. However, since the nursing home was full, he ended up staying at the old greenhouse, surrounded by colorful coffins. The next morning, he sat down with the other seniors for breakfast, feeling disheartened by their lack of vitality. Vasilich, now recovered, joined him, finally acknowledging his friend's visit. He apologized for the previous day and mentioned feeling better with the new medicine from the nurse, reassuring Vika that it was effective. Just then, Irina arrived, catching Vika's attention with her elegance as a former actress. Inspired, he later gathered flowers outside for Irina, but paused when he spotted certain herbs nearby. Presenting the flowers to Irina, she was unimpressed, accusing him of stealing them, much like he took money from Nikolai's car the day before to give to Zanka. He grinned, explaining his fondness for Robin Hood as a child. Suddenly, one of the men suffered a heart attack, grabbing everyone's attention. Vika insisted on calling an ambulance, but Anatolia argued they couldn't afford it. Vasilich agreed, noting that with the little money they received from Nikolai, they could only wait for death. However, Vika had an idea. He showed his friend the special herbs outside, guessing that they were left behind by the previous owner, an artist. He suggested selling the plants to raise funds for the nursing home, but realized they needed to hide them in the greenhouse. So, they used the coffins as makeshift plant beds and transferred the herbs. However, Irina caught them in the act. Vika argued that selling the plants could cover their necessities, especially since the government had stopped providing housing, leaving the elderly to rely on charity. Irina refused to resort to illegal means to solve their problems and demanded they dispose of the plants before she reported them. Nevertheless, Vika later drove the van to purchase gardening supplies. Upon his return, he discovered that the man who had suffered a heart attack earlier had passed away. Irina grieved for her friend, suggesting that medicine might have saved his life. This convinced her to assist Vika with his plans, and the trio began working on their secret project. For weeks, they tended to the plants, but they lacked a way to dry them. Irina devised a plan. She wore a swimsuit and requested the rooftop keys under the guise of sunbathing, granting them access to the attic where they could use the heat to dry the leaves. Before long, they had a sufficient amount to sell. While Vika calculated their potential earnings, Irina noticed an improvement in Vasilich's health, speculating if he had been using the product. She then confessed to stealing Ziploc bags from Anatolia to store their produce, earning praise from Vika, who called her a genius. She shrugged off the compliment, but he insisted they should go out sometime. With this in mind, Vika took his friends to a club, where they clumsily attempted to attract customers. However, the clubgoers were skeptical of the elderly vendors. Irina proposed they needed a middleman, prompting Vika to negotiate with a bartender. Unfortunately, the bartender insisted their products weren't suitable for the club. Just then, another club employee warned the bartender about an impending police raid, prompting him to dispose of his products into the sink. Before the trio could grasp the situation, officers stormed the place under the command of Major Timofeyev. Puzzled by the elderly group's presence, Irina improvised a story, claiming she, her husband, and his friend were searching for her granddaughter who had snuck out. Using her acting skills, she feigned panic, convincing the major to let them leave before continuing with their operation. Back in their van, Irina vented her frustrations, fearing they might end up in jail. However, they still needed to sell their goods, so Irina proposed a new plan. The next day, she took the men to a nearby town where they encountered 3 elderly ladies sitting on a bench. Irina pretended to consider moving there for its tranquility, prompting the old ladies to gossip about their neighbors. From their conversation, they learned about Dimka, who was rumored to be involved with questionable herbs. The group approached Dimka and persuaded him to assist them in selling their products online. Dimka then showed Vika how to find clients using his phone, resulting in 3 sales by dinner time. However, they still needed a method to deliver the items. Suddenly, smoke emerged from the vents, prompting Vika to rush to the attic where he found Koropolov burning their products. After sending Koropolov away, they quickly extinguished the flames and dispersed the smoke. Vika then scolded Irina for leaving the door open. Offended, the woman slapped him before storming off. Once she had gone, the 2 men burst into laughter. The rest of the residents also seemed to lighten up as the effects of the smoke took hold of them. Later, Vika approached Irina to apologize for his remark. He then shared a childhood memory of seeing a peacock at the zoo. Despite signs discouraging feeding the animals, he tried to entice it with toffee, which allowed him to pet the bird. However, a week later, he discovered that the peacock had died from choking on the candy. To his surprise, Irina found humor in his tale, reflecting on her own childhood foolishness. She closed her book and used a leaf as a makeshift bookmark, sparking an idea for discreetly transferring their products. The trio visited the library, selecting books to conceal their products and inadvertently boosting visitor numbers. With the earnings, they bought a boiler and medicine, indulging in a shopping spree afterward. When questioned about the source of the money, Vika fabricated a story about selling Bitcoin. They enjoyed a night out, but later, Zanka found a woman from the bar in Vasilich's bed. Meanwhile, Nikolai faced competition, and Vika reminded him of a nursing home visit. Anatolia revealed they already had a boiler, leading to embarrassment. Vika confronted Nikolai about his exploitation, causing Zanka to return his money, humiliating him, and prompting his departure in a fit of rage. Vadik's men traced their activities at the library, prompting Irina's panicked escape as they closed in on her. Vika proposed selling their inventory to avoid trouble, but Nikolai refused to give up his territory. As tensions rose, Vika received an offer for their goods, suspecting it came from law enforcement or a rival. At a gas station, Vasilich's nervousness led to his arrest when he accidentally dropped their product in front of police officers. Vika and Irina rushed to the station but refrained from exposing their operation. Irina scolded Vika and suggested confiding in Zanka, but they found Major Timothy waiting, aware of their situation. Vika needed money to resolve the issue, so he decided to sell their remaining products, reluctantly involving Irina. As they prepared to make the sale, Anatolia caught them, leading to a confrontation among the tenants. Despite their efforts to conceal their activities, Vika and Irina found themselves in a car chase with the police the next morning, prompting Irina to criticize Vika for their lack of planning. Vika skillfully navigated onto a dirt road, hoping to evade the pursuing police, while Irina held onto the coffin tightly. Their escape was momentarily halted when a tractor inadvertently blocked the police car's path. Despite this obstacle, the police managed to find another route to intercept them. Thinking on her feet, Irina pretended to mourn over her husband in the coffin. In a stroke of quick thinking, Vika concocted a story about rushing to meet gravediggers, which garnered sympathy from the officers. They offered to escort Vika and Irina to the cemetery, where they reluctantly participated in a faux burial to avoid suspicion. However, their efforts to retrieve the coffin were interrupted when the officers returned, prompting Vika to fabricate another excuse about a forgotten item, allowing them to temporarily conceal their contraband. As they finally recovered the coffin at sunset, they unexpectedly encountered Nikolai and his men. Despite their surprise, Nikolai found amusement in their audacity and ordered them to proceed with their deal. However, Irina stood her ground, demanding the money to release Vasilish. Nikolai resorts to holding Irina at gunpoint, while Vadik apprehends Vika. Despite being cornered, Irina denounces him as a coward for resorting to firearms to manipulate the situation. This provokes Nikolai to assert his dominance, highlighting his control over various establishments in the area, including clubs, hotels, and even law enforcement. He challenges Irina by handing her the gun, daring her to prove her bravery by shooting him. To everyone's astonishment, Irina actually pulls the trigger, grazing Nikolai's ear. This unexpected turn of events signals Timofeyev's task force to storm in. They swiftly apprehend Nikolai and his associates, revealing that Timofeyev's collaboration with Vika was intended to facilitate the gang's arrest. Timofeyev promises to testify on Vika's behalf to mitigate his sentence. Subsequently, the trio face their charges in court, where Zanka, their fellow tenants, and even Anatolia appear to testify in their defense. Zanka told the judge they gave her and their tenants what they needed, not for themselves. The judge sent Irina and Vasilik to 3 years in prison, and Vika to 5 for planning it. Irina couldn't say bye to Vika as they left. He smiled, saying he'd be okay. 5 years later, Irina picked up Vika from prison. She took him to Nikolai's mansion, awarded to their group. A peacock welcomed them. They now lived grandly with Koropolov, cooking on the grill. Zanka cared for them, and Anatolia helped the ladies exercise. Vasilik was happy and clean. Vika got the happy ending he wanted for his friend. He crushed a tempting herb to keep their paradise safe.
Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and stay connected with us.